If you are playing Lightning Warp Stormweaver, chances are you have been dying a lot, especially if you are an average PoE player like I am. You don't have a lot of currencies to throw into your build. So I'm gonna teach you 5 cheap and fast-free ways to help you with your survivability that are very easy to implement. And 4 of the methods require only skill gems. The last method requires buying gear, but most likely you already have one. If not, it is fairly affordable. And best of all, none of these 5 ways require modifications to your skill tree at all. They are at worst temporary solutions. At best, they can actually be part of your permanent solution to your survivability. So when you upgrade your gear and get more energy shield or damage and you find yourself no longer needing them, you can simply swap out your gems. You don't have to do any modifications to your skill tree. So I'm going to be listing the 5 different methods in order of least effort to the most effort required. The first method is to actually slow down the speed of your ball lightning skill. If you find yourself constantly being warped into packs of mobs and dying because of that, you can consider equipping a deceleration gem into your ball lightning skill. This will greatly slow down the speed of your ball lightning, and when you are just starting mapping, deceleration support skill gem is very recommended so you can warm up to the maps and gauge your power level in relation to the mobs before you warp too far. So, a slower ball speed ensures that you don't warp in too deeply into uncharted territories before you actually have the time to assess the number of monsters in the area. When I first started mapping, I found myself warping way too deeply into a pack of mobs, and in the end, I couldn't kill them in time. I actually lured a lot of mobs to come over and kill me, so it was like really bad. But after I had deceleration on my ball lightning gem, I found that I was able to control my speed a bit more and progress the map slower. So yes, it does slow down the progress of your map, but do you know what slows you down more? Dying slows you down, especially because in PoE 2 you not only lose 10% of your experience, you also lose your really juiced up map and nodes. It's a very painful process. Dying absolutely should be avoided. Having a slower ball speed is also great for tight spaces, as the balls take longer to come into contact with the terrain, giving you more time to warp. The next method is you can consider implementing a form of electrocution in your build. It can be easily fitted into any build. You just have to attach electrocute and neural overload into any lightning damage skill gem. I am using Orb of Storms for this because I can just lay it on the ground. I don't have to cast it. I don't want to cast anything else because I'm going to be casting ball lightning and lightning warp already, and I don't want to waste any more time to manually cast something just so I can electrocute the monsters. Electrocution is really underrated. I feel like a lot more people could actually implement electrocution in their build. You actually don't require any spirit. It doesn't reserve any spirit. You don't have to do any modifications to your skill tree. It's extra damage and extra crowd control ability. It's really helpful for breaches because the range is actually really long. Oftentimes when I'm mapping, I have found monsters being electrocuted for like 5 seconds in like the next 2 rooms. That's how far the range actually is. And of course, when we are playing Lightning Warp Stormweavers, we actually invest some points into the size of our area of effect, so that actually helps Orb of Storms to scale naturally as well. Electrocute does prevent it from shocking, but that's actually a good thing because we want the higher damage magnitude of shock from our lightning warp. I have found this to be extremely helpful for my survivability because electrocution is a 5 seconds immobilization. It is 1 second longer than freeze, and with neural overload you don't actually have to do a lot of damage before you actually electrocute the mobs. In fact, you can actually electrocute a lot of the white mobs, which might be very hard for you to freeze because you need to do so much damage before they actually freeze, and if you are doing that much damage, they are already dead. So electrocution has been really amazing for mapping because you just don't know when you might find yourself being swarmed by mobs, especially if there are like the demons that spawn from the red orbs lying on the ground. You can find yourself sometimes being trapped between packs of mobs, and if you already have an Orb of Storms that can electrocute, it will save your life a lot of times. I highly recommend it. The next method of ensuring your survivability is actually to implement Grim Feast into your skill set. It requires no support gems, you just have to equip it and then activate it. At only 30 spirit reservation, it requires the minimal amount of spirit for a persistent skill. But at 30 spirit, it actually doubles your energy shield. I cannot tell you how many times I was caught unaware by a ruining explosion or some kind of on-death effect, and it took out my entire energy shield with the Grim Feast. Without the Grim Feast, I surely would have died a lot more times. Grim Feast works so well with Lightning Warp because most of the time we don't have to pick up the souls manually. By the time we are done with a few packs warping here and there, we are already at max capacity without realizing it. An extra tip with using Grim Feast is to actually go for the bosses immediately if you find yourself already at max capacity energy shield, just in case you need the extra layer of precaution. Blink is crucial for sorceresses for survival. However, not a lot of us can actually afford a high energy shield body armor that also comes with 40-50 spirit, because those things are really expensive. I am also not able to afford a body armor with high energy shield and spirit, which is why I am also using this method in order to ensure that I have Blink. Blink is essential to our survival because it doesn't care about the tiny obstacles or if you are trapped in the middle of a pack. So I'm going to teach you a very cheap way of implementing Blink into your skills. Even if you don't have enough spirit, you are going to configure all your other skills that you're going to be using with your main weapon set to be only usable in that set. And then for the skill that you want to use with Blink, you are going to set this and Blink to only be usable in the second weapon set. So for the execution, what you want to do is you want to cast that skill in the second weapon set and then Blink immediately. You do not have to wait for the skill to be cast, so the moment you swap your weapon, you can immediately press spacebar to Blink away. Honestly, it doesn't matter what skill it is. If it is something that you are able to use, that would be great. And here is an extra tip for WASD movement users. This does not affect the mouse movement users. So for us who are using the keyboard for movement, the direction that we're moving towards has a higher priority than the position of our cursor when we're blinking. So I'm not sure if you realize this, but the direction that we're moving towards with the WASD movement keys has a higher priority than the position of our cursor when we're blinking. What this means is if you are traveling upwards with the W key and your position of the cursor is actually on the south end of the map, you are going to blink upwards, even though your cursor is pointing towards the south. So what this means is that we can only effectively blink in 8 different directions with the WASD key movements when we're trying to blink. The 8 directions obviously being up, down, left, right, and the diagonal combinations of those directions. I really dislike using blink because of this, because I could only travel in certain directions. However, sometimes you might be in a really tight corner and those 8 directions of the WASD may not be the most ideal positions for us to blink to. So when you want to blink, you have to immediately lift your fingers off the WASD keys. When we are not holding on to our WASD keys, we actually end up blinking to where our cursor position is, and this offers you a much higher precision for blink. This has been incredibly helpful. I cannot stress how grateful I am that I discovered this method, that I can actually blink more precisely to a very safe location by making use of the cursor position, because I realized I could only blink in that few directions and it honestly didn't help, because I would either be trapped in a different pack of mobs or be stuck in a wall because I could not blink anywhere else. However, because I am now able to blink to exactly where I want to be, where my cursor is, I have survived so many more situations. So it does take a bit of practice, especially if you are new to this method. not only do you have to swap your weapon before you blink, you also have to lift off your keys. However, I guarantee you that if you are able to practice this technique, it will save your life so many times. Alright, the last method is of course the most resource intensive method, but in my opinion it's also the best for mitigating damage and increasing your survivability. So this last method is actually using the Blasphemy skill gem. So what Blasphemy does is that it turns your curse skills into an aura so you don't have to cast it. As Lightning Warp Stormweavers, we already have an extra skill that we need to cast in order to deal damage. We have to cast out our ball lightning before we can start lightning warping, so we are already casting an extra skill compared to like a Spark Stormweaver, so we don't want to have any more castings. That takes away our DPS, that makes mapping slower, so just turn it into an aura. And the best thing is that it has such great synergy with Lightning Warp Stormweavers because we are so constantly close to the monsters anyway, so why not just turn it into an aura so that the moment we warp into a pack of monsters, they are already cursed by our aura effect. Blasphemy does take up quite a bit of spirit. At 0% quality, it takes 60 spirit reservation per curse, and at 20% quality it reduces that by 10, so you need only 50 spirit per curse. Incredibly helpful. I'm personally using 2 curses, so with the 20% quality I'm actually saving 20 spirit, and since spirit is such a scarce resource, this 20 spirit is incredibly precious. So the 2 curses that I am using for my Blasphemy is Temporal Chains and Enfeeble. None of these curses actually give me extra damage. Temporal Chains actually slow down the enemies. This, in my opinion, is way more important than the Enfeeble. If I have enough spirit for only 1 curse, I would definitely stick with Temporal Chains because it slows down not only the movement speed, but everything about the monsters. They have slower attack speed, slower movement speed, slower skill speed, so all these actually translates to a very effective reduction in the monster's damage towards you. This increases your survivability so much. The Enfeeble curse will make the monsters deal less damage. This is actually really helpful because if they deal less damage, that actually means that you have a less chance of being stunned, and then of course because they are doing less damage, you actually have more time to mitigate that damage and blink out if you want. So absolutely you must enhance your curses and the Blasphemy with Gem Cutter Prisms. The 10 spirit reduction per curse is so helpful. Since it does take up quite a bit of spirit, we most definitely need to purchase a scepter on the market. It is something that we will need to get eventually as spirit improves our build so much. We don't only need spirit for our curses, but we also very likely use cast on something in order to increase our damage. So a scepter is pretty much essential. You want to go to the trading site and try to get a scepter that gives you at least 200 spirit. If you can, a 200 spirit is still fairly affordable. So these are the 5 methods that I have implemented before for my Lightning Warp Stormweavers. They have been immensely helpful for my survivability. After I started implementing these, I was able to map T15 and T16 maps much more easily. I could warp into huge packs of mobs without worrying too much. Of course, you have to be equipped with the right gear as well. So these are my 5 methods of survivability. I really hope that it helps you. I hope with this you don't die as many times, because I have been so frustrated playing this build, because even though it's really fun, it's also really risky, and we often put ourselves in precarious positions due to our Lightning Warp. But with these survivability methods, you are able to map with less anxiety and dangers. So I really hope this helps anyone who's looking to play a close to mid-range build. It doesn't have to be Lightning Weaver. It doesn't have to be a Lightning Warp Stormweaver, as long as you are playing a fragile sorcerers who are in close contact with monsters, then you can consider implementing all this. This is the end of the video. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you very much.